Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. This time, times squared. Times squared. Yeah, a lot of math. We don't get into much math. We just get into the nuts and bolts and words and phrases on this episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. But before you listen, hey, if you're not part of the club, it's growing, it's ever growing, it's a big club, it's a soiree. It's patreon.com/IBD. Go there, support the network. You can do it real inexpensively. We don't say cheap here, even though I just did. Speaking of inexpensive, here on It's All Been Trucked Before, this is Times Squared, and It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. And we hope you're still staying safe from coronavirus as we record this. Everybody's starting to go back out, but that was months ago, so you'll know how that went.
That's right.
We're still isolated and quarantined and recording from our individual homes.
That's
so
right.
I think you're going to get all of season 2 from our individual homes.
I think you're right.
If not season 3 as well. Anyway, we are here to talk the episode Times Squared. And let's start with first impressions.
I was really hating it when I watched it. As I look at my notes, I'm feeling less hatred about it. And maybe you guys can, again, you guys might help change my opinion. And hate's a strong word. I think there's a lot I didn't like about it, and we'll get into that as we always do. But not my favorite might be a better way to put it. But
so the funny thing about that for me is Steven and I were both playing trivia the night before. Well, the night before we were supposed to record this.
Right.
And one of the people in the chat, I mentioned the names of the episodes, and he immediately said, "Oh, I hate that. Times Squared." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds weirdly negative," because I'm thinking time's in a title. I'm going to like this. Time travel stuff. I love that kind of thing. And then just as I started getting into it, I'm like, well, maybe I can kind of understand why someone would not like this. So
well, and I kind of went in because the guy in the room was like, I hate this one, and I immediately was like, well, I'll show him. I'm going to go in and I'm going to like this. Like,
right.
Ooh, maybe I'm not.
But, I mean, you guys are pretty. I think we're pretty much on the same page. I wouldn't say I hate it. I wouldn't say I loved it. I think it was just fine. That's kind of how I feel about it.
When all is said and done, I'm thinking it's going to end up being one of those things where the concept started off being intriguing and then they fumbled it somewhere through. It sort of kind of balanced itself out.
So this was the 4th and final episode, directed by our friend Joseph Scanlon, who had directed The Big Goodbye, Skin of Evil, and Contagion. Not bad episodes. And the story was by Kurt Michael Bensmiller, who just has 2 teleplay by on his IMDb page. This and what is widely considered one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine, called The Storyteller, that was made about 4 years after this. So we'll get to. Oh wait, I'm not sure that's the episode Deep Space Nine I'm thinking of. Never mind. No, that's not one of the best ones. That is also an episode. Never mind. I almost gave him credit. But anyway, the story was by him, but the teleplay was actually written by Maurice Hurley, the producer, the one who, fought back and forth here with another guy. And this is one of the middle episodes of Maurice Hurley's. Maurice has a few more stories coming up, Q Who, Shades of Grey. But Maurice Hurley had previously written The Child, The Neutral Zone, The Arsenal of Freedom, Heart of Glory, Data Lore, Hiding Q. So not super great episodes there for the most part. Although I do want to mention with The Child, I just found this out. I wish I knew this at the beginning of the season. But did you know there was a writer's strike during season 2 of The Next Generation? And that's why this season is 4 episodes shorter than the other 6.
Oh,
they actually came off the beginning of the season, not the end. And The Child is a Star Trek Phase 2 script that they used so that they could rush production and get it going.
Wow.
Although Maurice Hurley did a pass on it.
It did feel kind of different than the rest, now that you mention it.
So I guess that would have been Lieutenant Ilea or Uhura that was pregnant had it happened back then. Yeah. Instead of Troy.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's start getting into this episode. The beginning, Riker singing to himself while he was making eggs was very charming. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And I do associate Riker with food. I mean, the first time we see him in Star Trek Picard, he's making pizza and a stone oven out in his yard in the woods, which is pretty cool with poisonous bunnicorn sausage. So venomous bunnicorn sausage. So he's definitely a adventurous cook that likes to try the different types of things. But what bothered me about that scene more than anything was they called them omelets and they were clearly scrambled eggs.
I was going to ask you guys about that. Did I imagine he said omelets? But yeah, definitely.
I didn't catch that, but
do you think the definition has changed in the next 300 years, or do you think they scripted him to do omelets and then in the day of he just kind of did scrambled eggs?
Well, didn't they say he used a certain kind of egg from someplace?
Yes, some alien egg that they all thought was terrible except for Worf.
That's right. Which I enjoyed that too. I really enjoyed that open up, all those guys hanging out. I just thought that was just a fun. Hey, we're hanging out, whatever, and I didn't care how it applied to the rest of the series. Obviously, there's character building and relationship building there, but yeah, I thought that was delightful. And my theory is that he didn't have enough experience with those particular eggs, so he's like, "Oh, this omelet thing's not going to work." Well, scrambled eggs it is, and I love Worf woofing them down.
Wouldn't he have other ingredients if they're omelets? Cheese, maybe some meat, some veg.
Probably.
This was just.
That's a good point.
And it's more of like a pocket pancake format if you're going to do omelets.
Yeah.
Right, you're not scrambling them up like he does.
I was going to, so that made me think of a couple of things. First of all, one thing I didn't write down, which this is just me theorizing about next week, but he did drop a kind of a throwaway line about his father. Well, not even really throwaway. They're kind of maybe foreshadowing to the next episode about his relationship with his father, saying that he learned to cook because he had to.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
His father wouldn't.
Yeah, and I thought that was another good bit of, we talk about this all the time. Good exposition, bad exposition. That's a good little drop in.
You think they threw that in there last minute because they knew that episode was coming up?
I don't know. That would be very interesting to find out.
Yeah,
I've certainly done my share of that on Radio Hour.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
The other thing about the alien eggs, when they really started talking about it, it made me start to wonder about how the replicators work for meat. When they had cooked steaks, and that I don't know why that hadn't really occurred to me before. But when you really start getting into the ingredients of things like that, how do you?
I thought the same exact thing, Keith. I immediately thought of the replicator too.
Yeah, how do you simulate things like that? Is there a different nutritional content? Are they gathering protein and flavoring it? How are they cooking it to make it hot? Things like that. Just I don't know.
Are they changed for different? I mean, like every human's taste buds are obviously different, but species taste buds, I would imagine, are a lot different too. That's why dogs, we can feed them gruel and they don't care. Right. Actually, you can probably feed me gruel and I don't care either as long as I'm eating. But yeah, so maybe that's more about palate than taste buds. But yeah, I had the same thought.
We've had enough characters complain about the replicator food not being as good as real food that I think it's probably just like they made a bland generic version that satisfies most people but delights nobody. And that became the standard.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Unless you want to buy the add-on pack.
But it maybe start going down the rabbit hole of just questioning the science of how that would work. And what confuses me is why didn't I think of that sooner than this? Or why wasn't that bothering me as much as just this one little thing made me start thinking about it in that way? I don't know.
Is it possible you fill out a survey when you come on board that's like, here's the things I like? It's like, I'm just thinking of ordering online I've done a lot lately, and like Nita's on High is a Thai place. And you can do from 1 to 6 with the spiciness kind of a thing. You can do the Ab India too. There's lots of places that have it. But so maybe when you come on board, you fill out a survey and you're like, I need this and this and this and this and this. And so when I ask for salsa, it might be different than when somebody else asks for salsa on the ship. They go to your usual.
I'm not sure they go that quite personalized, but
Yeah.
you can personalize your order when you make it. We hear a few characters do that over the years. I mean, the most famous example, of course, is tea Earl Grey hot, where Picard specifies the type of tea and the temperature. And I do believe they establish he has preset what he thinks of as hot. But so maybe you're onto something there. I'm already contradicting myself as I'm talking. But.
No, that makes sense. And I don't know. Obviously, they couldn't really get into this on a TV show or movie or whatever, but you could probably also, to avoid like product placement, I feel like somebody could say, I want paste picante salsa or something like that.
I think next season on the Orville, we'll have Gordon go up to the replicator and ask for Taco Bell Crunch and Supreme or whatever.
I want to see what Taco Bell's offering in that century.
I've got one more note about this scene.
Me too. Go
It
ahead.
looks like the poker club, essentially, which is great, except they left out O'Brien. And I'm like, what, O'Brien's good enough to play poker with you, but not good enough to eat eggs with you? But then to, again, contradict
It's a different kind of activity, though.
And O'Brien's in this episode, so it's not like he's not around. But I guess to contradict that theory, in the very next episode, which we'll talk about later, O'Brien's all of a sudden Riker's confidant that he goes to talk to about his deepest feelings when everybody else is working. So I don't know, maybe O'Brien's that friend of Riker's that he really likes, but he's kind of embarrassed he likes him, so he mostly hangs out with him by himself and doesn't invite him to the group things. I don't know.
I mean, you don't have to avoid. I mean, you want to avoid reading too much into it because he could just have been busy or something. He could have been working.
That's the most likely explanation.
And who knows how much time passes between these things and how our relationships evolve. So I don't know.
He might have had a date that night or morning. It was morning, right? Well, we assume it's morning because it was scrambled eggs, but maybe it was after the poker game and O'Brien went back to his bunk.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a single guy now, though. Oh, I guess I had another comment about this scene of, I think it's Worf that says in most human families, the woman shares in the cooking.
Yeah.
I didn't bump on that so much as, like, I bumped on it because I noticed it, but he specifically said shares in the cooking. He didn't say most families
that's a good point.
No, that was very strange the way they first of all had him make a point of saying that, and then it's like it's almost like a backpedal in the middle of the sentence. Like, wait, we can't say that because wouldn't it be the future? Like, let's say shared. I don't know.
I mean, Worf grew up with a strong mother, and we've seen how strong Klingon females can be. They'll later establish in the canon and Discovery that they had a Klingon female chancellor 100 years before this. So I took it as just like I think what he was getting at there was Riker's like, well, my dad wouldn't cook for me, so I did. And Worf was like, I guess that was Worf's roundabout way of saying, why didn't your mom help out? I don't know.
I think there are better ways of putting that didn't it felt like they were trying to avoid the sexist overtones of saying something like that, but also they needed to get to the point where more characterization for Riker. I guess they gave him a reason to say that his mother wasn't around, and also to foreshadowing the relationship with his father.
I think it's too early to call it, but I think so far Riker might be my favorite character of season 2.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I between this episode and
one we're gonna watch after this.
Yeah, I started feeling like I feel like this is as much. Obviously, this kind of ends up being a Picard episode too, but I'm kind of with you guys on that too. Yeah, Riker's.
Well, you're like a Kirk guy, and Riker's just Kirk 2.0.
Yeah. So yep. Which I have notes on that later too. Well, kind of. I have one more note on this scene. One thing I feel like Next Generation's doing a better job of this is we ragged on the original series and the animated about, hey, how about talking about other planets, referencing things from other planets?
Yes.
But except when it comes to booze, nobody has a Jameson's. Since I'm looking right at that, nobody has a Jameson's. Nobody has, except for Scotty and his scotch.
That's what I'm drinking right now, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Except for Scotty, everybody else is drinking Sorry and Brandy, Rami the Nail, this and that. Which I'm saying that in a good way. I think that's good. But so I noticed that, and I can't remember what they said there were the booze they mentioned in this scene, but I just know it was not of Earth. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, even on the subject of favorite characters, I don't know. Maybe if I really started thinking about it, I'm sure there's more Data stuff, there's more Geordi stuff. Worf is actually coming up a lot in this season, and certainly Picard. So I don't know. Everyone. I mean,
I think the ensemble is really locking in. I agree.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's that. I mean, Troy too.
And I like Pulaski.
Really improving.
I'm a Pulaski lover, not a Pulaski hater, personally.
Yeah.
I'm starting to come around on Pulaski these last couple episodes.
Well, I was a McCoy fan, and she's essentially McCoy 2.0. So
yeah.
I know why we all like Data, because he's Spock 2.0.
Kind of. But
yeah. Well, that's what the 2.0. They're like a totally revamped version of them. He's not the exact same, but that basic personality type is there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm probably been more of a Tuvok guy, but we're not getting there for quite a while.
We'll be there before you know it, Keith.
Nope. If we all survive that long.
Oh my god.
Sorry. Anyway.
We'll be recording in Canada. So the shuttlecraft was named El-Baz, which was named, I confirmed, but for Farouk El-Baz, who was one of the primary NASA scientists that worked on Apollo.
Oh.
The Apollo program and the moon landing and everything. So I thought that was a cool little tribute to, I guess when they made this episode already in the past, but a cool tribute to a real-life NASA scientist.
Nice.
Did it seem like in the shuttle bay that was a portable tractor beam, even though it was painted on the floor, like stand clear of this tractor beam and there were lines? That looked like they rolled it in and out.
Chloe's laying out my notes now. They called it a secondary tractor beam.
Well, that's because it was inside, right?
Yeah, I kind of like that. As the tractor beam tracker on this podcast, I thought it was kind of cool. I guess it's kind of just like another I'm trying to. It's like in my mind, it's like when like a jet lands on an aircraft carrier, and they have those kind of nets or whatever.
There's like a hook. On a cord.
Hook. Yeah.
That's
what it made me think of.
It's funny because so often in Star Trek we see the shuttle land in and fly on its own accord, and this time they used the tractor beam. And this could be why it's portable because they don't need it all the time. I felt like it was because that shuttle was dead in the water that it couldn't fly on its own, so maybe that's why they had to use the tractor.
Oh, yeah. I was excited to see another shuttlecraft. I'm always, regardless of how I feel about this episode, whenever I see the shuttlecraft bay, I'm excited. I just love, whether it's the original or this show, the TNG so far. I don't know. I just always love it. I get excited.
I like on the original, they only had one shuttle, but on Next Gen, we've already seen a couple different types and sizes, and that's exciting to me. And Deep Space Nine, we get the runabouts, which are basically like mini starships. I love them. They can go to warp and stuff.
I would say just in general, from the sci-fi perspective, it's good when they expand the world in some way or add some detail or show you something where they're committing to this is how this works or this is what the ship looks like, things like that.
As long as they're consistent on follow-up.
Right.
So Picard's the Picard that they pick up who's sleeping, his makeup is pretty bad.
Well, he did fall asleep in it, so sorry.
That contrasted very sharply with just how good Patrick Stewart's acting was while he was awake in the same scene. Like, I really thought Patrick Stewart blew that scene out of the water where he had to come and find his duplicate.
There's some stuff where I think we're going to get into as far as my notes and those kinds of scenes. I think conversely, the sleepy Picard, or when he is lolling and awake and out of sorts, and I mean a lot of that can be chalked up to the writing of it and so forth as well. But yeah, that was a little incongruous, I'll say. My first note, other than the eggs, past the eggs, was that when they brought the shuttle on board and he just looked at the blast patterns or the smudges and said, that's an antimatter explosion, or that looks like one. Do you remember they just had like the black marks in the shuttle, and I thought that was curious, or another kind of maybe too expedient a shortcut for saying that kind of exposition. Must have been antimatter.
I didn't think that at all, because I'm sure they've come across a lot of starships. They've had to look at the damage and determine what happened to it, and he's been out for a couple of decades. I don't know. I totally just bought that as a professional knowing his job.
I think maybe what this comes down again to just the way that they decided to implement it or represent it visually. It didn't seem to me to be something that distinctive compared to other things we've seen before where there have just been like, char patterns or something. I don't know. That's it. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe it's just the visual of it that I had a hard time buying.
I will say, as soon as I saw Second Picard, my expectations for the episode dropped precipitously.
Like I said, I wasn't impressed with Second Picard, but First Picard was doing a really good job in that scene.
He worked hard.
All the whole senior staff ended up in the shuttle bay getting dragged into this.
That's hilarious that we even think of it in that way. It kind of it makes sense to even say First Picard did a better job than Second Picard. It's just like, which in a way is a testament to how well he was doing. I don't know if that makes any sense. You bought that they were different people, although it's like he wasn't doing as good a job somehow as I don't know.
That leads to one of my other notes, which I remember. I can't read it because Chloe's laying on my notes. But actually, if you look at Enemy Within, I think Kirk 1 does better than Kirk 2. So I think Kirk 1 in Enemy Within is the docile one or whatever, the smarter one, the intellect, whatever, that part of our psyche. And then the other one's just pure id and evil or whatever, that all that stuff. And it could be a classic example, and some of it is a classic example of Shatner overacting, although I think he's doing it right. But I think if somebody just flips it on, it's like, oh, there's Shatner being Shatner. But yeah, it is funny. It's the same thing. It's 1 versus 2. But I also decided, and I know we've already covered my Kirk bias many times. I think 2 Kirks, and this is unfair to Picard to judge this episode against Enemy Within, because I think Enemy Within is a lot more things than this episode and is better done and is early on and is in the pantheon already. I think in this instance, 2 Kirks are better than 2 Picards.
Are 2 Picards better than 1?
Huh.
No.
Agreed.
And so I guess this also made me think of the Brady Bunch, which makes me think we all have doubles somewhere in this universe. And some of us probably have several. Because we've already, and even in just the TNG, we've got 2 Picards, kind of 2 Datas.
With lore, yeah.
Yeah, and then I thought we had another set, but maybe not. Maybe that's it so far.
Well, there was the thing where the time was stretching and overlapping, and they had the 3 in the elevator thing. So, of course, that wasn't really like hey, we're different people. That is more like a demonstration of,
The 2 Rikers is coming up at some point.
I don't remember that yet.
Oh, you don't?
No.
There's 2 different. Okay, I won't spoil it, but there will be 2 Rikers.
Thank you.
That are 2 distinctly different characters, both played by Jonathan Frakes. That are pretty cool. What did you think of the conceit of the time being out of time causing the vital issues with Picard 2?
I wanted to like it more than I think I did. I know I go back and forth between I like it sometimes when there's that mystery. It's like, well, you figure it out, and then there's sometimes it's like I feel like this episode fell into the more of like, we're not going to tell you everything because we don't know what the hell we're talking about, and we hope you go with us. And and I just didn't. And there's I think it's Riker who says the line where he's like, well, or maybe it's Picard. One of them was like, well, we've committed to this sequence of events, so we have to do this. Which, and I thought when he first said it, I thought, oh, we're getting into some Donnie Darko territory here, where it's like when you're on a certain, when you're on that path, when you're in that channel, you can deviate from it as long as you stay within that channel. And that's what I thought he was saying. But then I felt like they just completely dropped it and never went back to it. Because then I thought they went back around to like, oh, we can change this, because essentially they did. And then I wrote, and this is just another one of my plugs, if you haven't watched Devs on Hulu, I feel like that's a better and more thorough discussion about the timelines and this stuff. And if you've already committed to something, you have to be committed to it. And can it change? Not saying it's better than Next Generation. It's it's really good sci-fi series. It's really interesting. It also has its flaws. It's better than this episode of TNG.
Thank you for reminding me of that, by the way.
Yeah, but so it just didn't. I wanted just spell me out a little bit more. Just give me a few more crumbs here to connect it for me. And I felt like they didn't.
I agree. Though, like we may be on a road that has no turns, and then they immediately take turns. It's like, why?
If I might plug myself,
sure.
The thing that I've been working on right now, the audiobook that I'm currently working on, is the first in a series of time travel books from the 80s, and it's called the Ivanhoe Gambit. So it's sort of like. Are they
set in the 80s or they're from the 80s?
No, they were written in the 80s.
Okay. And
published mostly. And it was by the author was also like he wrote some Star Trek novels as well. So that was interesting. Anyway, my point is, some of the chapters I've been editing right now, listening back to myself, trying to explain things and trying to decide, does this make sense to me as I'm listening to this? They go on about paradoxes, and when you have something that has happened, if something travels back into the past. And the mechanics of how that works. Just the concept of how to break free of something like that, I thought was fascinating. I'm not sure if it lines up correctly with what they're saying here. If there is a correctly, I guess that's kind of the point too. How do you establish what really is how things should happen? And there's so many different flavors of time travel, and they're people's expectations of how that should work.
Well, yeah, I think they deal with that just briefly in this episode where they're wondering, like, should we go forward? Or is that what gets us in trouble? And I liked that they touched on that stuff. I just wish they would have explored it further.
Yes,
Yeah, all right.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
I guess I'm just going all over the place and not getting to the point. I took relatively few notes, but my last one pertains to this in a sense. I said the episode was supposed to be like a theoretical examination of how paradoxes work, but the way that they dealt with the vortex was so, as Stephen was saying earlier, it was too much of we're going to be vague to the extent where we don't really understand it ourselves. And I mean, that's what it felt like. It's like they were under-explaining it because they didn't quite understand how to get it across, or if they couldn't decide on exactly how that would work. It was sort of like the abstract art of throwing something up on the canvas and saying, okay, you make something out of it. This is art. And in the end, it ended up kind of feeling like nothing actually mattered. Like the events of the episode they weren't really getting forth anything that was consequential.
Well, in the ending, just Picard shoots himself and that ends the cycle. Really? I mean, not only the fact that seems out of character for Picard for like murdering a human being, but it just doesn't also really gel either with.
I mean, was he dead? I mean,
No,
I thought he was just stunned.
No, he killed him. Because then somebody ran and checked on him and he's like, oh, he's dead.
Huh. I thought the definitive action they took really was taking the entire Enterprise to the vortex instead of just a shuttle.
So the Enterprise was already in the vortex in the log they watched, but the Enterprise was trying to escape the vortex. And I guess, so what the difference was, Picard left in the shuttle because he thought the vortex was only interested in him. And if he left the ship, then it would leave the ship alone. But instead, once he leaves the ship, it destroys the ship. So that's where Picard's like, no, I'm going to stay in the ship and kill myself. And then we push forward like the Chinese finger trap instead of fighting against it. And then he shoots himself for no reason. And then O'Brien, who's just in this episode, I guess, to watch Picard disappear, is like, yeah, no, he's dead.
That wasn't my impression of what happened there. I thought he was just, first of all, I thought he was stunning him to prevent him from leaving the shuttle. And secondly, I thought that there was a different course of action in the sense that he previously had taken the shuttle himself directly into it, as they did with the ship, which resulted in him being thrown back. And there's going to be a lot of implications that the vortex itself was some sort of living entity that was trying to warn him against that action.
So I thought the vortex was testing him. So maybe the vortex threw him back in time as like, okay, I'm going to give you another chance to pass the test.
Oh, damn it.
That wasn't totally clear if the vortex threw him back in time or how he got back in time, though.
You see, we're already like proving their point. This is art all of a sudden. We just have these different interpretations of here's how it worked.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, how I feel about beings testing the Enterprise.
I did think the effect of the vortex and the Enterprise getting sucked into it looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I like some of it felt super cheesy and some of it looked really good. So I came away to watch, but I thought some of it looked really good. I thought it looked really good from the shuttle bay, and maybe that's my shuttle bay bias. But I thought that shot looked really awesome.
I thought the whirlpools, the actual getting sucking in and the whirlpool appearing in space was really cool looking.
Yeah, I thought it looked better it going into it rather than the shot from a distance.
Yeah, that for lack of a better word, triggered my space directional conceit about the idea.
Yeah,
it's conveniently it's unidirectional and positioned directly beneath, quote unquote, the ship in that way, so that the plane where they had the ships have to meet nose to nose, that kind of thing, kind of felt weird, but.
Well, they were testing the ship, so of course they'd appear on the plane with the ship.
Yeah, true. I mean, especially if it's sentient or whatever is happening there, which, again, they didn't really, I guess, explain well enough the nature of that thing, that they dangled the mystery of that. But thinking about it, I feel like I'm going to make a similar point in the next episode. Would there really been an explanation that would have been satisfactory? Or I guess more to the point, would there have really been an explanation they could have come up with that would have been unique enough to be even for there even to be a purpose in making it. The idea of there being somehow, yes, okay, this is another powerful being that has some sort of sentient thought that is doing this for some capricious reason or for some confused reason or for some whatever, So, maybe I should just accept that this just happened. Maybe it's even a natural phenomenon, something.
Yeah,
but
it literally comes out of nowhere, literally, which, life comes at you fast, but I wanted more. And maybe this is just me shouting against the randomness of the universe. But
that's something that it might have made it worthwhile if they could have even made that point, honestly. The idea of there just being things that just sort of happen. They're natural phenomenons. They defy explanation. This isn't a thing that is doing this on purpose or it has some sort of thought involved or some mysterious motive. It's just a thing. It's a black hole, some kind of something, some sort of naturally occurring thing. But, And
I think, I think they've made that point in ways in other episodes where they've been like, well, we're out here to find new things and explore new things. So, this is going to happen. But this one just didn't feel organic, for lack of a better word.
That's
It felt very
almost a self-contained pun there.
So
sorry. It was just kind of like, well, okay, so I'm just thinking of the pitch idea. Okay, so something just shows up. Well, why? It's mad at him? No, that doesn't make any sense. Well, what if it's sentient? Okay, maybe that'll work. Where is it just sitting there waiting for any ship? Yeah. Well, why does it just go get a ship if it's this powerful? You know what? Let's just go back to where we started with this. It just shows up.
This is like something about just having started, acting and the things that have happened over the last, 4 or 5 years, whatever. It's just I start to see things in a different kind of way, in the sense of I start to imagine the writer's room involved in whatever's going on. Like this being this kind of pitch meeting happening where they're trying to hash out, why is this not working, or why won't this work, or how do we fix this one little thing, and trying to imagine, did they do a good job of addressing this or not?
I don't think Star Trek Next Generation Season 2 had the writer's room you're describing.
Yeah,
that's the common writer's room. I don't think this season had that.
Well, certainly. But I'm saying that kind of gets into my head sometimes, though, when I'm watching these things, and it makes it a little bit harder to suspend disbelief than it might have been, maybe 10, 15 years, or especially 20, 25 years ago, when this would have been on. These things wouldn't have occurred to me, but now it's just it makes it just slightly harder.
Over 30 years ago, Keith.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
This episode is almost as old as I am. It's funny, I wrote down an exchange from this episode that I feel describes what you're saying between Pulaski and Picard, where she's like, do you know what you're doing? And he said, no. Honestly, though, I just like that exchange. I didn't think it described the episode then, but man, I thought this episode was fine, and you guys are making me think, no, it wasn't really all that fine.
Well, see,
I didn't think it was good, but I was like, yeah, it's fine. Now I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was a mess.
Well, there are some other things I haven't quite gotten to yet, but I mean, I don't know why. Again, I expected to like this more, given that it involved time travel in some respect, and I felt like I liked it more at the time than I sound like I do as I'm describing it as a thing. If that makes any sense, it's just.
Yep. So I also wrote down, and this seems minor now compared to some of these issues, I thought it was weird when Picard cleared the shuttle bay so that he could take the shuttle. I didn't think he needed to clear it. And he's the captain. Can't he just walk in and take a shuttle?
Right.
Can you refresh my memory on what was going on there?
It's when he was trying to leave, the Picard 2. He's like, clear the shuttle bay.
Like toward the end?
Yeah. I only have 2 other notes here. I like that they brought up the Traveler when talking about time travel. I mean, it wasn't all that relevant, but it's nice to throw back to a season 1 episode.
Oh, the mysterious alien with Wesley?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
I also really like that Picard and Riker had such a great heart-to-heart episode there.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I did like that.
One scene I didn't like, and Pulaski and Troy get together, and it's like, oh, 2 women are getting together and talk, but they spend the whole time talking about Riker, so...
Yep.
And it's just...
past the Bechtel.
And I just
was this episode?
Yeah, and I just thought it was just a really... I thought those 2 were working real hard for that scene, but I thought it was just so poorly written. and I just ended up writing Bechdel fail scene fails. So because it already failed from the beginning because they were talking about other stuff, and I just thought.
Why were they talking about Riker? I don't remember.
Not Riker. I'm sorry, Picard.
Oh, okay. Oh my God. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah.
But everything they said, I just think the writing in that particular scene just didn't ring true, and so it was a disservice to both of them. It was just, for once, it's like, oh, the two women get to talk. Nope, we're gonna fail, and it's gonna be, yeah.
So I've only got 2 notes left on it. One of which is one of the things that bothered me, and it ended up being a brief thing, but. What I wrote was the opposite effect gag is hard to sustain in the bizarro way. And what I meant by that, if you're familiar with DC Comics and Bizarro Superman and the way that they try to do those things, and it varies from writer to writer and the audience for the vehicles, like the children's cartoons, like Super Friends and so forth, or even, like Superman the Animated Series. When you try to think about how to work this thing, you got this being that has to be treated like the opposite way. And they were getting into that with the Picard 2. Like, stimulants make him sleepy or sleepy. The thing of don't do that because, and it's like, wait, that doesn't, why would that make any sense with this time travel phenomenon that they aren't quite explaining? Like an antimatter kind of thing that they're trying to go for, it felt like. But,
this helps me a lot, Keith, because I wrote Opposite Day, but you're right. It's more Bizarro Jerry episode is what it is.
Yeah, so they couldn't hold on to it for very long because they started doing the idea that this is going the effect of this is going to lessen as they approach the point in time, which actually I like that part of it. I like the idea of that, but why even try to do this sort of minus or reverse time thing of it being opposite, because it's hard to make a logical sort of consistency with that. Because it falls apart pretty quickly if you try to say the opposite of everything will do this.
It's almost like they were throwing just anything at a wall and hoping enough of it would stick with us. And let's throw this concept and this concept. And there are episodes where they do throw out a bunch of concepts, and I think we've just watched some of those recently when we were on a really good roll where it's like, man, these guys, there's still a lot going on here. We've definitely talked about a lot of episodes all through our Trek rewatch where there's too much going on. We're like, oh man, I wish they focused on this. And we've had some recent ones where I think TNG did an amazing job of having a lot of spinning plates, for lack of a better term, and keeping them all going and all really in a good. Well, and this one, I think the problem here is they didn't go for it with any of them, and so they fell short. They didn't commit to any of them fully.
Well, I mean, to expand on that, I think what's happening there is, but they're actually focusing on one thing, but it's
the wrong
not clearly defined enough, so that they're throwing details at you in that kind of sense of like, let's throw this other thing here to make it a little bit more mysterious, or throw this other thing here to maybe explain this other thing, but not quite. They're trying to harmonize with something with these different details, but they just clashing with each other.
This one we kind of touched on. I thought the whatever the sentient being was looked like. It just made me think of Annie M. and Wizard of Oz when I first saw it. Especially that shot from a distance looking at it. I think Riker says this. He says we'll be like a rag in a dog's mouth, which I know this is another one of those where I'm like, I feel like everyone on the bridge should look at him like, what the hell are you talking about? What does that even mean?
What's a rag? What's a dog?
Or it's just one of those like, there's Riker with one of his crazy sayings again.
I would assume we still have dogs and rags in the 24th century.
I guess so.
I know we have dogs.
I guess they have rags when they're changing the oil in their garage.
I mean, even if they're not changing the oil, you need rags for all kinds of things, cleaning the house.
I know. I'm mostly joking about that, but still, just they have their pinup calendars, and
and maybe it's less about will there be rags and dogs than will people still be saying like a rag in a dog's mouth.
Right. Yes.
But I guess if there's dogs, people are still going to be putting rags in their mouth and pulling on it. And who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
He's from Alaska. That's
that's right.
Rural area.
Oh, that is mind blowing. Yeah. Well, I guess we're getting to that next week.
Yes.
So I had 1.5 things left. one was I noted they tried to escape at warp 9 finally.
Yeah.
Instead of warp 8.
Yes.
The other is just to go back and finish up the point that I made a little too early about my last note, which was the way that everything sort of ended up. It didn't feel like a satisfactory wrap up of what had happened, or I think they escaped that vortex, and it just didn't really quite feel like it explained adequately what was going on with the entities, the time travel phenomenon, what they took away from it, that sort of thing. We kind of covered all that, really, but I'm still saying it. I left the episode feeling like it didn't feel like it had a point to what they experienced or learned. Like it was just sort of a thing he fell out of haphazardly, and they learned nothing from it, and we didn't learn anything from how the universe worked from it, I guess is the thing.
Yeah. First fashion. This is also kind of the per section of the podcast. I felt like this was the most shots of Troy walking away, and I felt like they just hung on it. Like I felt like the characters stopped what they were doing so we could watch her leave the bridge. And like if I was directing this as a play on stage, I'd be like, "Hey, you don't have to wait for Troy to leave to start your line. You can start it as soon as you guys leave. Just start your line." But I feel like it happened 3 or 4 times in this episode where they're like, "Hey, everybody, let's let Troy leave before we move on with everything so we can watch her leave." And I'm not complaining because Marina Sirtis looking fantastic, looking great here. But that's pseudo fashion. That's a stretch for fashion. The other thing is
we get the fashion in this episode.
Yeah. The other one is similar, and this goes back to last week when I asked about the shields. But this episode, we got a little bit of shaking, and I noticed that by watching Troy bounce in her seat because I think it was Riker or Picard was standing there like, "Oh, I'm not going to fall. But everyone kind of leaned to the left, and Troy just sat there and kind of bounced up and down like she was on a mild roller coaster, not a steep descent, but just kind of a like a wooden roller coaster that's kind of bouncy, but not necessarily going down a big hill. So the shields, maybe they're not as great as I thought they were, but or maybe it's just because of that vortex. So I thought that was timely that it came back up again this week.
My alternate episode, I think, is just where was Wesley in this episode? Maybe he was hanging out with the Traveler, and that's why they mentioned the Traveler.
Yeah.
Or maybe just they forgot to tell him something was going on, and he got left out. I don't know.
My alternate episodes are the Seinfeld part of this episode, Bizarro Jerry, thanks to Keith reminding me, because that's much better, or The Enemy Within, which, yeah. This is definitely not the same episode, and definitely not quality to me, and whatever, and obviously Kirk bias. But anyway, so those are my alternate episodes.
So Wesley's going to be a non-ranked episode here for annoyance. This is the second episode of the season he's missed. He hasn't been out since the third episode, Elementary Dear Data.
Wow.
But Steven, who was your annoyance in this episode?
So this was probably early in the episode when I wrote this, but it was everyone. But
I never get tired of that reference. I was so that's for a Facebook thing. I was so delighted when you made that thing. It was like, does he mean this? Yes, he meant it.
My friend,
the professional.
Warren Phoenix Johnson. He uses that he plays that soundbite on his radio show he does every weekend. 11 to 1. 11 to 1 Central in Chicago, Bad Waves, Q4.org. Listen to that every Thursday. But they use that stinger, and when he gets done, he says, "Shout out to Gary Oldman." And then I think he makes a Wire reference. I looked it up once. He makes another reference to somebody else. But anyway, so yeah, every time I hear everyone with an exclamation, I hear Gary Oldman. But then I had 3 people, and now I think I've settled my one. I had Picard. I think I had Troy and Pulaski just for that bad Bechdel scene, which I've decided wasn't their fault. So I'm going with, it was Picard number 2. Now I'm calling Bizarro Picard. So that's my most annoying person.
Bizarro Picard. I had already written down Picard 2 for myself. We're on the same page. Keith?
Well, first of all, I hate to be the well actually guy as far as the Bechdel thing goes. However, I mean, it wasn't quite, well, no, I guess that really does count. I usually when I think of the spirit of it, it's about like the romantic interest of like, oh boy, does this man like me? What are his romantic interests? What's going on with him? But yeah, I mean, that's still fair. I mean, the idea of them just like Uh,
That they don't have anything better to talk about than a guy.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is their job to do that. I mean, she is the counselor, and Pulaski is the doctor, so they should be discussing his well-being in that sense.
They should be, but
yeah. So I guess something about the way it was written came off that way, though, which is also important to point out. As far as the annoyance, I can't really help but lean toward Picard too. Yeah. And there's what else can you really bump on there?
Okay. Did anybody have a crush on the Vortex, or does that hold steady for the episode?
Yeah, I hold steady. Yeah,
I'm holding steady.
Yep.
Okay, and ranking the episode, we're gonna start at the top.
Yes.
Yep. So the current better than Elementary, my dear.
That's number 3 right now.
Oh, yeah.
The current bottom runner for the season is Where Silence Has Lease. That is the one where the face appears in space and they're in a void.
Yeah, I like this one better. I'll give it.
Really?
I don't remember the face thing right now. So are we back down to the bottom? You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm starting at the bottom.
I think I might like this one better just because it kind of I don't know. It kind of tried. I don't know.
I think that was better than this, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But if you two both say that, better.
I'm curious. Is it because we changed your mind during the discussion, or?
I think it's partially that, and partially I don't think Where Silence Is Lease was that bad. I don't think we've had any terrible episodes this season.
Maybe I'm trying to decide if I just hate that title more. Although Times Squared, I should hate that title more than I do. Maybe
there's an excellent novel called Q Squared.
Okay.
Well, Times Squared could actually be really, really clever. It just felt like it was wasted on this.
I think that was the other thing when the second Picard shows up, and then you come right back and it's like Times Squared. It's like criminy. Come on.
Yeah. No, that's they were kind of jumping the gun on look at what we did with this play on words, and that's not how this was really working as far as squaring the time. No.
Yeah, you might be selling me on this, Jimmy. I'm taking it to the bottom.
Wow,
I think it belongs on the bottom.
I just know Where Silence Has No Lease. I just didn't hate that title.
If you want to look up one more, right above that is the Schizoid Man with the old doctor.
Schizoid.
Yeah, whatever.
Wait,
I think that was better than this too.
God, what was going on? That was
Data's the old doctor that put himself in.
Oh right, yeah. No, that was better.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Has there? I guess I don't really think about how that works or how it's even worked for us in the past. The idea of there being a bottom episode and then something going beyond that. But yeah, I think that
something always has to be at the bottom.
Right.
I think last season Code of Honor hit the bottom so early in the run.
Yeah. It held on tight.
And nothing ever beat it. But yeah, I vote for bottom. If you guys want to put above Where Silence Has Lease, you can argue.
No, you're right.
I think you convinced me.
Okay.
Wow. Mind blowing. It shouldn't be mind blowing, but it is.
And I still don't think this is a bad episode. I mean, it's not a good episode.
Right.
But
it
could be worse. I'd watch it again.
It doesn't make me want to punch a wall. I definitely didn't. I didn't like it. That's for sure.
I don't yearn to watch it again, but if somebody had it on, I'd watch it.
Right.
Well, I would just for the 19 shots of Troy leaving the room.
God.
Yeah, season 2 is yet to hit those bottoms. Anyway, next week we'll be talking the Icarus Factor. Riker's delight at being offered a command of the USS Ares turns to frustration when the man sent to prepare him for his mission is, spoiler, his estranged father.
Oh.
Also, semicolon, Worf's behavior leads Wesley to delve into Klingon tradition.
Oh, yeah.
So, join us next week for the Icarus Factor. Spoiler, it's better than this episode.
I was going to say, I hope I like it better, but I feel like I'm already liking it better than this one.
I'm already sold.
It won't be the worst episode.
Until then, live long.
And prosper.
Stay out of vortexes.
But they come out of nowhere.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?
Oh man, that rain hit quick and
yes, it did.
Horrible.
Not here.
Yeah. Give it 10 minutes.
You guys are too far west.
Oh, it might be the delay. It might be the delay on the Zoom.